So, lepers under siege. Based on 2 Kings 6:24 to 7:16, Israel and Aram have long alternated between outright war and uneasy peace. The warmongering king of Aram chafes at the current truce with Israel. So this is the king of Aram, the Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad says, we're going to cut off the food supply to Samaria. And Samaria is the ancient land of Israel. And so you have the king of Aram, Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad is trying to cut off the food supply from the ancient people of Israel. And they were going to try to surround it and starve the people into surrender, which is exactly what the U.S. is trying to do in Venezuela with all the sanctions, and that's what Israel has been doing to Palestine for quite some time. They count every single calorie that goes into Palestine. So, the king of Aram, Ben-Hadad, the first son of Tabrimon and grandson of Hezion, was king of Aram Damascus between 885 BC and 865 BC. He's a figure only known from the Old Testament. The only thing we know about Ben-Hadad is what 2 Kings says about Ben-Hadad. And apparently he was a contemporary of the kings Baasha and Ahab of the kingdom of Israel and Asa of the kingdom of Judah. So, okay, here we have the king of Aram. Ben-Hadad is trying to cut the food supply from Israel. And the soldiers are saying, excellent, the longer they hold out, the easier it will be to conquer him. Right? Woo! So what's going to happen? Let's find out. So the Aramean army pitches its tents around the walls of Samaria and waits. I wonder how long they can hold out. The city makes a brave stand to hold out, but as the months pass and no food is allowed through the gates, the Israelites are reduced to eating donkey heads and bird droppings. And worse, the people plead for the king to take action. Our children are dying. We must have food. I'd rather take my chances fighting the enemy than starving to death. We're so weak now, they'd defeat us easily. This is the moment the queen mother, Jezebel, I've heard of Jezebel before. So the queen mother, Jezebel, has been waiting for this. Your people are starving. And what is Elisha's God doing about it? Nothing. Get rid of Elisha and call on my God, Baal. You're right, mother. I'll order him put to death immediately. What a strong king. So Ben-Hadad I bows down to Queen Mother Jezebel, and he is ordering his men to kill Elisha because the people are starving. But Elisha has no fear of the weak king who wavers between God and Baal. This siege is not the Lord's fault. It is Israel's own punishment for not staying faithful to God. Nevertheless, the Lord says there will be enough food for everyone tomorrow. That's impossible. What? Will you make the whole army disappear? Even then it would take days for food to get here. Meanwhile, 4 lepers exiled outside the city ponder their fate. I'm starving. What can you do? There's no food in the city. The Aramean soldiers are the only ones with food around here. Then let's go over to the Aramean camp. Maybe they'll give us something to eat. If we stay here, then we're definitely going to die. If we surrender to the Aramean soldiers, we might die. But they also might have mercy on us and feed us. Either way, we have nothing to lose. I want to surrender first. Maybe they'll give me my first choice of food. In desperation, the 4 hungry lepers approach the Aramean camp. Something strange is going on. There's not a guard in sight. Maybe it's a trap. Maybe it's this or starve to death. I'd rather die slowly than quickly. How can I surrender without a guard to surrender to? There's nobody here. They all left their food, and their stuff looked gold, silver, were rich. For a while, the lepers revel in their good fortune. But then, it's probably not right to keep all of this food from the starving people in the city. If we don't share the good news, people might blame us. Well, okay, but first let's hide some treasure for ourselves. The lepers go back to the city and pound on the gates until a guard answers. The Arameans are gone. Gone? Where? We don't know. We just ate their food. Roused from his bed, King Joram. King Joram, I thought it was Ben Hadad. Okay, so King Joram. Apparently, King Joram is roused, and it was King Joram's mother who is Jezebel. Oh, this is the king of Israel. Okay. So King Joram receives the news and he calls for his advisors. It must be a trap. The Arameans are waiting in ambush to capture us if we leave the city. Maybe let's send out a few men to see what's going on. The king's men confirm that the enemy camp is empty, then quickly pick up the Aramean trail by following the clothing, weapons, and vessels dropped along the way. Look, more shields. The Arameans were running so fast they didn't want anything to slow them down. What could have happened to make trained soldiers throw away their weapons and run for their lives? The Israelite scouts follow the fleeing Aramean army to the Jordan River. Along the way, they overtake one of the enemy soldiers. Pull up! Here's one who's dropped behind. Maybe he could tell us what happened. Why did the Arameans desert camp in the middle of the night? We were going to be attacked. We thought the Hittites were coming from the north and the Egyptians from the south to trap us. But there were no signs of any other armies. You saw them? We heard them. And that was enough. Back in Samaria, the starving Israelites rush out to the Aramean camp, eat their fill, and haul the rest of the food back to the city. You said there would be food, Elisha, but I didn't believe you. It was the Lord who promised the food, and you can always count on the promises of God. And that's the gospel of the Lord. Praise be to God. So we have, let's see, Asa called on Ben-Hadad to aid him in attacking northern Israel, while Baasha restricted access to Jerusalem through border fortifications. Ben-Hadad took the towns of Ijon, Dan, Abel, Beth, Machah, and all of Chinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali. 1 Kings 15:20. This acquisition gave Aram Damascus control the trade route to southern Phoenicia. By the time of the reign of Ahab, the area was back in Israelites' hands. So this is the NIV, the New International Version. They don't say that they're eating poop, but they do have, an asterisk. So they was like, maybe it's poop. Maybe they were eating poop. I don't know. Maybe they were definitely eating donkeys' heads. But we don't know if they're actually eating poop. So, an axe head floats. The company of the prophets said to Elisha, look, the place where we meet with you is too small for us. Let us go to Jordan, where each of us can go get a pole, and let us build a place there for us to meet. And he said, go. Let's see, Kings what, and what? I feel like I'm reading too far into the damn thing. But let's actually, okay, so Elisha traps blinded Arameans. There we go. So this is 2 Kings 6:8. Elisha traps blinded Arameans. Now the king of Aram was at war with Israel. After conferring with his officers, he said, I will set up my camp in such and such a place. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing that place, because the Arameans are going down there. So the king of Israel checked on the place indicated by the man of God. Time and again, Elisha warned the king, so he was on guard in such places. This enraged the king of Aram. He summoned his officers and demanded of them, tell me, which of us is on the side of the king of Israel? None of us, my lord, the king, said one of his officers, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. Go, find out where he is, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. The report came back. He is in Dothan. So he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went by night and surrounded the city. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh, no, my lord, what shall we do? The servant asked. Don't be afraid, the prophet answered. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. As the enemy came down toward him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, "Strike this army with blindness." So he struck them with blindness as Elisha had asked. Elisha told them, "This is not the road and this is not the city. Follow me and I will lead you to the man you are looking for." And he led them to Samaria. After they entered the city, Elisha said, "Lord, open the eyes of these men so they could see." Then the Lord opened their eyes and they looked, and there they were inside Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he asked Elisha, "Shall I kill them, my father? Shall I kill them?" "Do not kill them," he answered. "Would you kill those you have captured with your own sword or bow? Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink and then go back to their master." So he prepared a great feast for them. And after they had finished eating and drinking, he sent them away and they returned to their master. So the bands from Aram stopped raiding Israel's territory. So this is remarkable. You had Elisha just out of nowhere, just had God's army of horses and chariots just appear out of nowhere. And they could have conquered the Arameans, but instead they showed mercy to the Arameans. That was actually the story beforehand. So here is where the Action Bible picks up. Famine and besieged, and actually the Action Bible's got the other story too. But famine and besieged Samaria. Sometime later, Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, mobilized his entire army and marched up and laid siege to Samaria. There was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 80 shekels of silver and a quarter of a cab of seed pods, a.k.a. bird poop, for 5 shekels. Hey, you want some bird poop? Give me 5 shekels of silver. You want this donkey's head? Give me 80 shekels. As the king of Israel was passing by on the wall, a woman cried to him, "Help me, my lord the king." The king replied, "If the Lord does not help you, where can I get help for you? From the threshing floor, from the winepress?" Then he asked her, "What's the matter?" She answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give up your son so we may eat him today, and then tomorrow we'll eat my son.' So he cooked my son, and we ate him. The next day I said to her, 'Give up your son so we may eat him.' But she had hidden him." What? The people of Samaria were starving so bad that these two mothers had made an agreement that one day they was going to eat the one son and then the other day the other son. But once the one woman gave up her son, the other woman hid her son. But they did eat the first woman's son, and she's the one that's going to the king. So when the king, this is the king of Israel, he heard the woman's words, he tore his robes. He was mad. As he went along the wall, the people looked, and they saw that under his robes he had sackcloth on his body. He said, "May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if the head of Elisha, son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today." Now Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. The king sent a messenger ahead, but before he arrived, Elisha said to the elders, "Don't you see how this murderer is sending someone out to cut off my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold it shut against him. Is not the sound of his master's footsteps behind him?" While he was still talking to them, the messenger came down to him. The king said, "This disaster is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer?" 2 Kings chapter 7. Elisha replied, "Hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord says. About this time tomorrow, a seah of the finest flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria." Meaning barley flour is going to be dirt cheap. The people are going to be able to make bread and food and eat. The officer on whose arm the king was leaning said to the man of God, "Look, even if the Lord should open the floodgates of the heavens, could this actually happen?" And Elisha said, "Oh, you're going to see it with your own eyes, but you won't eat any of it." The siege lifted. Now there were 4 men with leprosy at the entrance of the city gate. They said to each other, "Why stay here until we die? If we say we'll go into the city, the famine is there, we will die. If we stay here, we will die. So let's go over to the camp of the Arameans and surrender. If they spare us, we live. If they kill us, then we die." At dusk, they got up and went to the camp of the Arameans. When they reached the edge of the camp, no one was there, for the Lord had caused the Arameans to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a great army. so that they said to one another, "Look, the king of Israel has hired the Hittite and the Egyptian kings to attack us." So they got up and fled in the dusk and abandoned their tents and their horses and donkeys. They left the camp as it was and ran for their lives. The men who had leprosy reached the edge of the camp, entered one of the tents, and ate and drank. Then they took silver and gold and clothes and went off and hid them. They returned and entered another tent, and they took some things from it and hid them also. Then they said to each other, "What we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news, and we are keeping it to ourselves. If we wait until daylight, punishment will overtake us. Let's go at once and report this to the royal palace." So they went and called out to the city gatekeepers and told them, "We went into the Aramean camp, and no one was there, not a sound of anyone, only tethered horses and donkeys, and the tents left just as they were." The gatekeeper shouted the news, and it was reported within the palace. The king got up in the night and said to his officers, "I will tell you what the Arameans have done to us. They know we are starving, so they have left the camp to hide in the countryside, thinking they will surely come out. Then we will take them alive and get into the city." One of his officers answered, "Have some men take 5 of the horses that are left in the city. Their plight will be like that of all the Israelites left here. Yes, they will only be like all the Israelites who are doomed. So let us send them to find out what happened." So they selected 2 chariots with their horses, and the king sent them after the Aramean army. He commanded the drivers, "Go out and find out what has happened." They followed them as far as the Jordan, and they found the whole road strewn with the clothing and equipment the Arameans had thrown away in their headlong flight. So the messengers returned and reported to the king. Then the people went out and plundered the camp of the Arameans. So a seah of finest flour sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley sold for a shekel, just as the Lord had said. Now the king had put the officer on whose arm he leaned in charge of the gate, and the people trampled him in the gateway, and he died just as a man of God had foretold when the king came down to his house. It happened as the man of God had said to the king, about this time tomorrow, a seah of finest flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. The officer had said to the man of God, "Look, even if the Lord should open the floodgates of the heavens, could this happen?" The man of God had replied, "You will see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of it." And that's exactly what happened to him, for the people trampled him in the gateway, and he died. Samaria, ironically, is actually located in Palestine. It's in the West Bank. The modern-day state of Israel calls this area of the West Bank the Judea and Samaria area. But that's only what Israel says. It's the West Bank. It's Palestine. So, modern-day Samaria. Right now, the Israelites are just like Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, and they're sieging Palestine, and they're trying to starve Palestine out. And so, all Palestine has to do is just listen to what the ancient Israelite tribes were doing, right? Just do what the ancient Israelite tribes are doing, and just, whatever, pray and do this and do that, and go to the Arameans and plunder them. But essentially, right, they're trying, the tactic, they're trying to starve you out, and they're trying to, so you got to eat, and you got to not starve, don't be starved out. So it's very ironic that Samaria, the king of Aram was attacking the ancient land of Israel, but now Samaria is Palestine, and Palestine is still being sieged by the modern-day state of Israel. So Israel used to be the ones being, besieged upon. Now they're the ones doing the sieging upon others. Now Samaria, let's read a little Wikipedia here. It's a historical and biblical name used for the central region of the ancient land of Israel, bordered by Galilee to the north and Judea to the south. For the beginning of the Common Era, Josephus set the Mediterranean Sea as its limit to the west. The name Samaria is derived from the ancient city of Samaria, the second capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. The name likely began being used for the entire kingdom not long after the town of Samaria had become Israel's capital, but it is first documented after its conquest by Sargon II of Assyria, who turned the kingdom into the province of Samaria. Samaria was revived as an administrative term in 1967 when the West Bank, defined by Israeli officials as the Judea and Samaria area, of which the entire area north of the Jerusalem district is termed as Samaria. Jordan ceded its claim to the area to the PLO, August 1988. It's West Bank. Okay, so it's in Samaria is the part of is the West Bank today, so it's in Palestine. And what have we learned? I don't know. Why don't you tell me? What does this Bible story teach us? The story about Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, Elisha saying there's going to be food, don't you worry. And then Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, was besieging Samaria. Then he just, I guess, takes the fuck off because he heard, the chariots and horses of the Hittites and the Egyptians. And they thought that the Israelites had hired the Hittites and the Egyptians. So they spooked themselves. They scared themselves. Or maybe God sent loud noises over there to scare them. So have faith in God. Have faith in the right God, not Baal. Don't you dare believe in Baal. Baal is those are the devil. Those are other Jews who believe in a different God. But I'll give the Bible the benefit of the doubt. The temple of Baal is just a bunch of devil worshippers. Okay, all right. Those Jews who worship Baal are a bunch of devil worshippers. All right. I guess we'll go. And then these Jews who worship Yahweh, I guess, are the Jews that will eventually become the Christians or something. These are the Jews that the Christians like. These are the good Christians, apparently. Because it does seem like the Jews are just fighting for Israel, fighting to hold on to Israel. They keep starving and dying and going here and there. And there's the promised land. Wasn't Moses, there was the promised land or something. So, yeah, this story precedes the other story where you have the Zechariah and King Joash. So this is leading up to Jezebel is actually central to the King Joash story. So, yeah, we're going to hear some more Bible stories coming up. Peace.